If you want to create content that attracts your ideal clients, the people that see us as experts, the people that trust us as a partner, the people that are willing to pay what we ask, then there are 3 key concepts that you need to understand. We don't just want content for content's sake. We don't want engagement for engagement's sake. What you really want is you want recognition. And you only get recognition for your work and for your content when you can change the way that people think. And the way that we do that is, rather than how-to content, we create great content gets people nodding along. It gets them thinking, oh my God, this person is in my head. What is it that our ideal clients are experiencing right now? Something that we can actually point to. So you might be thinking, well, how do we know that? And the answer is really simple. In this episode of the Creative Courage podcast, I'm going to be deconstructing the last 6 or 7 years I've spent creating content and sharing with you what I believe makes the difference between content that flops and content that can create 5-figure deals. So I've spent hours and hours creating content. I've had times where I've written a post that I was convinced was incredible and was going to get loads of traction, was going to attract lots of my ideal clients, and it's just flopped. And I've also had times where I've written a post literally waiting for an Uber and just put it out there and kind of forgotten about it to only check my LinkedIn a few hours later and have several DMs from people asking how they can work with me. So I see a lot of creatives making content that gets more traction with peers rather than prospects. And so in this episode, I wanted to just break down why I think that is and what are some of the key concepts that we need to understand. So it's easy to feel like maybe you don't get enough recognition for your work or for the content that you put out there. And I really believe that recognition is one of the key ideas or key concepts that we really need to embrace. I've seen when we get recognition as creatives, as business owners, as problem solvers, then people will pay us more money. They will treat us differently when they recognize the value. And I'm using this word recognition and recognize intentionally because one of my mentors once said to me, people won't pay for value that they don't recognize. And it really stuck with me because I thought about this word recognize and I actually started looking at the etymology of this word. Like, where did it come from? What does it actually mean? And obviously it comes from Latin, like a lot of words. And when you break it down, it kind of means to know. And it got me thinking about content that really resonates with people and gets them to send DMs to me being like, how do we work with you? Or can you tell me more about X, Y, and Z? Versus the ones that just kind of get a ripple of applause or a few likes and comments, or, maybe they even go viral, quote unquote. It's like they don't actually get anything apart from more views or more engagement. And what we really want is we want content that educates our ideal clients and positions us as an expert. So I started thinking about this idea of recognition. How do we get more recognition for our work? How do we get more recognition for our content? And how do we become recognized as a thought leader or an expert in our field so that people trust us and they want to pay us to help them solve their problems? Like, what do we really need to do? So if you think about this idea of recognition, what we're actually doing is we're getting people to change the way that they think about something. Now, you might think about recognition as like awards or people saying that they heard you somewhere or heard about you from someone, and that is recognition. But if we take a step backwards, it's like, what created that recognition? And so in most cases, this idea of recognizing is like recognizing, right? We're like rethinking about a particular idea or a particular point of view. And so I believe that most content tries to educate, and I don't think we need to educate. I think we need to help people to reimagine or rethink something. And so I'm going to give you some kind of clear ideas and examples of how you can do this in your business. But there's kind of three key ideas, three key concepts that I want to talk about today, which I really believe help people to rethink, not just learn, but rethink about a specific problem. The first one is that we have to meet them where they already are. That's like big idea number one. I see a lot of people putting content out there, creative putting content out there, talking about the importance of brand and the importance of storytelling and the importance of insert the thing that they do or they sell, right? And that is great, but it won't get the attention, your ideal clients, in a way that gets them to recognize the value of what you do, because you're not meeting them where they are. When I say meet them where they are, what I mean is great content gets people nodding along. It gets them thinking, oh my God, this person is in my head, or how does this person know so much about me? And you've probably experienced this yourself, right? You've probably read a sales page, or you've listened to a podcast, or you've seen an interview with someone and you're like, oh my God, I feel like this person literally knows my life. And so this idea of meeting them where they are is about being able to articulate what they're currently experiencing. And so the way that we do that is, instead of talking about our services, we want to start talking about symptoms. What is it that our ideal clients are experiencing right now? Something that we can actually point to. So, for example, rather than saying like, oh, do you have a lack of leads right now? It's like, that's a really kind of generic problem. You can't really sort of point to it. Like, what does a lack of leads actually look like? Versus you might say, do you dread waking up on Monday morning, looking at your inbox only to see invoices rather than inquiries, right? It's something you can really tangibly point to. Do you actually wake up? Do you look at your inbox and it's full of invoices, like money you owe, versus inquiries, people asking about how they can work with you? Okay, now you've got my attention because you're talking to my experience. You're like, yeah, that is what happens, right? So you might be thinking, well, how do we know that? And the answer is really simple. Have conversations with people. I've said this many times on this podcast, but clarity comes from conversations. And so we need to get curious with our ideal clients. And it could be people that we've worked with before. It could be just people that are in our network. We have to get curious, and we can just go to networking events. Hey, I'm just curious, like what frustrates you? Like what frustrates you about your business? And you could start with, what do you love about your business? What's one thing that you really enjoy about the business that you run? Is it that you can run it from anywhere? Is it the type of people you get to work with? And people will happily talk about that, right? It's good. And then the really logical next thing is like, and I'm just curious, what frustrates you about it? Like, what don't you like about it? Oh, well, there's this thing. And oh, okay, tell me more about that. And how does that show up for you day to day, right? And I'm being very sort of exaggerated here. Obviously, you'd keep the conversation natural, but that is where we want to take the conversation, and we want to listen really carefully. So it's almost like our ideal clients are writing our content for us. And we can do this so easily now in the digital world that we live in with things like AI note takers, right? We can literally have these conversations on Zoom or Google Meet or whatever, and we can take the literal things that they've said and we can use that in our content. So the first big idea is that we have to meet people where they are. And the way that we do that is we swap our services that we talk about, like branding and film and storytelling and all of that stuff, for symptoms. What is my ideal client experiencing right now? Second big idea that I want you to get is that people will recognize value when they see things in a different way. And in order to see things in a different way, their story or the way that they currently see things has to be challenged. And a lot of people, especially creatives, are afraid to do this for many reasons. Some people feel like they don't have the authority. Some people worry about upsetting people, whatever it is. But I found in my life, the people that literally pay me whatever I ask are the people where I challenge their current way of thinking. And interestingly, what I've also found, not just from my experience, but from talking to a lot of people who work with C-suite executives and directors and people that are at a very high level, is the higher people get in a certain organization or in a role or whatever it is, the less they are challenged typically. And so there is a form of sales called challenger sales, and there's a book that's written by on it. I can't remember who it's by right now. But the idea is that first we meet them where they are. We say, hey, is this happening right now? And then we challenge the story. So how do we challenge the story? Well, this is all about language. So most people are talking about how to. They're creating content that is about them rather than about their ideal clients. And it's very how to. How to build a brand that gets you investors, right? Here are the steps. Okay, great. Kind of vanilla, kind of beige. No one's really going to pay attention to that, right? How to do the thing you think people need to do. That's typically what the content looks like. So we're going to switch that from, are you experiencing this? Or imagine this. This is the scenario. You wake up on a Monday morning, you open your laptop and and you're literally describing what somebody has told you that they experienced, that frustration, that thing that you can point to right now, that pain point, that irritation, that frustration, right? That's step one. Meet them where they are. Step two is challenge their thinking or challenge their story. And the way that we do that is rather than how-to content, we create what-if content. So let's go back to the example of, hey, you don't have any leads right now. Okay. So we've swapped that for, do you wake up on Monday morning and you look at your inbox and you have more invoices than you do inquiries? They're like, oh yeah, that happens to me. So you might say something like, I know I said what if, but let's start with something slightly different in terms of phrasing. It's easy to think that ... Now, if I can kind of go a layer deeper, and I'll talk about this in a minute about the 3 layers of problems, but if I can go a layer deeper on their thinking, so not only have I described their current situation, but I'm now talking to the voice in their head. And you might be thinking, Matt, this seems crazy. This seems like psychology 101 or something, but once you get it, it really is quite simple. And once you get it, you will see a transformation in your content. So you then come back and you say, it's easy to think that, so in this case, it might be easy to think that the market's really slow right now, or there's just no work out there. Or it's easy to think that you should spend more time creating content, or you need to reach out to people in the DMs. And you need to send a bunch of cold emails because there's no inquiries that are coming through. And so you need to reach out to people to get some projects in, right? So now I've met them where they are in terms of I've identified what they're currently experiencing. I've then kind of identified what they might be thinking. And now I'm going to challenge that. So now I might say something like, what if the problem isn't your marketing, but what if the problem is your message or something like that, right? I'm just kind of making this up on the fly, but I'm just talking about what I've seen from my experience, right? So you might think that, you need to spend more on marketing, or you need to do more marketing. You need to go and send a bunch of cold emails. You need to create some content. But what if the problem wasn't your marketing, it was your message? Now you've got my attention, because now I've met you where you're at. I've acknowledged what you might be thinking, and now I've pointed to something else. The problem might be over here, but what about if it's actually over here? And this comes to the kind of next big idea. So the third big idea I want to talk about today is that there are actually different types of problem, different layers of problem, and they're kind of like 3 key layers. So if you imagine a big circle, almost like an onion with 3 layers, the outside layer is what is known as the known and the spoken problem. And so this is what we will tell kind of anyone that our problem is. So in this case, it's, I don't think I have enough leads, right? Okay, well, I might go and say to people, oh, it's a bit quiet this month. Work's a bit quiet, pipeline's a bit dry, right? That's my known and my spoken. The next layer down under the known and the spoken is the known and the unspoken. And that's where we're really looking at, what is this thing that's going on in this person's head? What are they thinking to themselves that they're not saying out loud? So they're kind of like aware of this problem, but they're not saying it out loud. So in this case, it might be something like, oh God, like, what about if our work's just not good enough? Or what about if like the market is drying up and nobody really needs animation anymore? Right? What if I'm actually not good enough to make this work? Now we're kind of talking to this like voice in their head, and it's the known problem, but the unspoken. They haven't said it out loud to anyone. So you might be asking, well, If they haven't said it out loud, then how do we know? And what's interesting is the more people trust you, so in these conversations, and the better questions you ask, the more you will get down to this known and this unspoken, right? Because it's something that they're aware of, and it's a narrative in their head, but they haven't actually said it to anyone out loud. But if you build trust with someone, it's a little bit like you probably tell your best friend things that you don't tell random strangers on the street. So if you can build trust with your ideal clients and you can create a safe space for them and you can ask them the right questions, they will actually tell you things that they probably won't tell other people. And so now we get down into the known and the unspoken. That's the second layer of problem. The final layer of problem is the unknown and the unspoken. They don't talk about it because they aren't aware that it's a problem. And this is where we are pointing them to someone else. So this is where our what if statement kind of comes in. What if the problem isn't over here, it's over here? And so what we're really doing is we're getting them to think about their problem in a different way. And therefore, because they are thinking differently, they are recognizing the way that they are thinking about that problem. They start to recognize that there is some value in the content they are reading. And so this is really the formula that I use for all content I create now. And I actually have something called the insight formula, right? It's about how you recognize value, because when you have this insight, this kind of light bulb, and I'm like, yeah, I have been thinking about this in this way, but actually maybe it is about this thing. It's like this kind of light bulb moment that you have. That's when we start to recognize value. That's when we start to recognize somebody as being a thought leader. They're getting us to think in a different way, right? So I just want to walk you through to kind of wrap this up and bring us back to where we started. I just want to walk you through the actual structure that I use and that I think about when I'm creating content. So I want to imagine it almost like a compass, right? So you've got north, east, south, west, and we're going to go around clockwise. We're going to go around that compass clockwise. So we start at the top with the symptoms. The better you can get at pointing to something in your ideal client's current experience, the more you will get attention and the easier it will be for you to get attention. So symptoms are about what is currently going on in your ideal client's life, business, day to day, that you can tangibly point to. So I want you to think, like, what are they experiencing right now as a result of not having the thing you know you can help them with, right? So if you really help people tell compelling stories and you create videos or animations that tell really good stories that engage their clients, what would they be experiencing right now if they weren't doing a good job of that? What would actually be showing up day to day? So symptoms is where we start. What can I tangibly point at? Then the next point around the compass, so start north, now we go east, clockwise. That is what I call assumptions. So this is where we want to try as much as possible to get into our ideal client's head in terms of the way that they are thinking, or a better way of saying this is the story that they're telling themselves about the things that they are experiencing. So if they wake up in the morning and their team is totally disorganized, what do they tell themselves about the fact that their team is totally disorganized? Is it, oh God, like you just can't get the people these days. It's so annoying. Like there's no talent on the market, right? Is that what they're telling themselves? Is it, oh, maybe like I'm just not a very good manager? Like what is the story that's going on in their head? So the assumption, right? What do I assume about the reason that I'm experiencing these things? Then the final, the south, the third pole, the south, is the problem. And this is the real problem. So if you think about these layers of problems, we're not going to be talking to the known and the spoken, right? Because we've kind of touched on this in the symptoms and assumptions. The known and the unspoken is where we really link into their story. And then the real problem, the root of the problem, is something that they probably haven't considered yet, or something that's slightly different to the way that they're thinking. So we're going to challenge those assumptions. What if it's not that there's not really good talent, right? It's not that you're not a great manager. What if the real problem is that people aren't emotionally invested in your business? And they're not emotionally invested because they don't know what they need to be emotionally invested in. And now all of a sudden you're like, okay, this is an interesting concept. But this is the root problem, right? This is what's actually going on. This is what we see from our perspective. We know that their story's not good. We know that their brand's not good. We know that they don't have a great animation on their homepage. And so people come and there's this complex product and people don't understand what it is, right? We know that. We can see that from our perspective, but they don't know that, okay? And so if they do, and you might be sitting here thinking, well, I just want people that understand the value of what I offer, and they already know what the problem is. They already know how to fix it. Well, what I'll tell you about those people is, number one, they're already out there searching, right? So they're already like, okay, cool. I need someone to create an animation for me. I need someone to create a video for me, whatever it is. Okay, well, they're already looking. So they're asking their network, they're Googling, and unless you are that person, like unless you're the referral, which is great if you are, great, then you're going to miss out on that work. And even if they go onto a platform like Upwork or something like that, and they're searching for it, or they post on LinkedIn saying, hey, I need someone to do my animation, or I need someone to help me create a video. Guess what happens? There's like 100 comments, right? Of people, oh, you need to use Jeff. No, you need to use Paul. And then what do they want to know? Okay, cool. How much is it going to cost, right? So I don't think we want those buyers. I think if we're going to be seen as experts, if we're going to create content that attracts our ideal clients, when I say ideal clients, what I mean is the people that see us as experts, the people that trust us as a partner, the people that are willing to pay what we ask, right? These are people that have not come to the conclusion of exactly what their problem is and exactly how to solve it. I don't think they're the best buyers. I don't think they're the people that we want. I know sometimes it feels like that because we're like, oh, where's the next project going to come from? Or, oh, I'm so bored of trying to educate people. Totally get that. But that's part of being a thought leader. It's part of being an expert. You have to have an element of education, or more importantly, like this podcast is about, an element of recognition, which comes from changing the way that people think. So that final part is helping them to really understand what is the core problem. And then on our West point, we are going to present the solution, and we're going to start talking about these new ideas, this new way of thinking. The idea that you haven't got engagement from your employees because they're not emotionally invested in your company. That's the problem. And the solution is to create a set of brand values, a set of guidelines, a way of thinking, a vision for the company, a story, a compelling narrative. It's to create something to get people to buy into. Now, if that ideal client has an insight of, I've been looking at the wrong thing, we don't have that, then you will get recognition for being the person that can help them. You will then be seen as the expert, and you will then be able to charge what you want to charge in order to solve that problem. Today's episode has been about content because I see so many people creating content that just doesn't land, and I know how frustrating that is. I've been there. I've done it for many years, and I finally figured out a formula to not just create engagement. Like, you can go onto my socials and you might not see a huge amount of engagement there. Like, it's okay, but it's not crazy. But what is good is the amount of messages I get every week in my inbox asking how people can work with me. What is great is that I'm launching a new system soon, and I've already got 40 people on the wait list. Like, that's what we want. We don't just want content for content's sake. We don't want engagement for engagement's sake. It's great getting claps. It's great getting applause. But what you really want is you want recognition. And you only get recognition for your work and for your content when you can change the way that people think. I hope you found this valuable. If you did, please hit that subscribe button and share it with a friend. My name is Matt Essam, and you've been listening to the Creative Courage Podcast.